Hi, welcome to Healing Humanity. My name is Dina, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about my story. So, I keep getting the question, what's your true story? What has happened? What's going on with you? Well, it's I've told the story before, probably 100 times, but I'll do it again. I was my story really it's the reason it's so difficult for me to talk about is because truly my story started when I was a kid, much like many people that are undergoing spiritual changes right now. Theirs also started when they were children, I'm sure, but there does come like a turning point in your life where you are you're almost smacked upside the head by God, and you're awakened to him and his life. So how'd that happen? Well, for me, I was in my 40s, and I all of a sudden was diagnosed with cancer. I had breast cancer, but it didn't run in my family, and I didn't have the gene, and so I was really adamant that um, that it wasn't normal, right? And I'm a big proponent for self-help medically, trying to look for the more natural ways to cure yourself, the ways to help heal yourself and to make yourself feel better instead of taking pills or um, you know buying into the medical community, because I don't believe that they're there to ultimately cure. I think they're there to make things last longer. I think they're there to, you know, make a good living. Anyway, um, that's all aside. So during my process of, trying to find ways to heal my body, ways to heal myself, my mind, my spirit, um, and hearing the word cancer, right? Sitting in the doctor's office, and I brought a friend of mine with me, and hearing those words, you have cancer and we need to have surgery. As small as the cancer was in my body, and as lucky as I was with that, um, because it was in the duct of the breast. It wasn't anything. Um, it didn't take my breast over. It didn't like it just didn't metastasize or anything like that. I was very very lucky. Um, if there's a luck in that, right? So I'm sitting there and I listen to these words, and it's terrifying. At first you don't know that it's small. You don't know that it's a fairly easy procedure, which mine was not. So all told, I wound up having 5 surgeries on the breast. Thank God I still have it. Um, and but I remember during that process, I was so unbelievably stressed and lost. Like, how could this happen? I don't have time for this. I remember telling her, I don't have time for this. And she said, you don't have time not to deal with this. And so I'm arguing with the doctor saying, I don't have time. I've got a big job. I've got kids. I can't do this. And she said, you don't have time not to, which is even more terrifying, right? So, always having been a believer, that particular scenario sent me back looking towards God. Um, to make sure that I'm clear of the sins that I had committed in my life. And, am I good to, should anything happen to me, am I okay? Am I going to go to heaven? Am I going to make it through? And where do I need to repent? What do I need to do? And so I sought God. I took classes and went back to the Catholic Church, and that was great at first, until I started asking some tougher questions, and that came from after going through, or just before I went through um, my second round of cancer, because I had it twice. I received Reiki through the hospital. And through the hands on healing from this woman, she asked me, she said, who do you call on when you are speaking to your higher power, to God? And I said, I call on God. I'm Catholic. And she said, okay, great. We'll call on God. And so um, she put her hands over my body, and she started this energy healing on me, like you hear in the churches, and they talk about hands-on healing, and they just happen to call it Reiki. So first few sessions, nothing happened, and then one of the sessions, the third session, and that was supposed to be my last one. She had her hands over my head, and I'm laying there with my eyes closed, and it's still, I mean, nothing much happened the prior two times, but it was nice and relaxing. Well, this time she had her hands over my head, and all of a sudden I started to process my entire life, right? I'm days away from surgery, but I'm now processing my entire life. Like, all of the things that made me angry, all of the things that made me sad, all of the things that really hurt me. And I thought, oh my God, I am never going to relax like this. And she gets to my heart, just over me. She wasn't even touching me. She was like this, over my body and over my heart. And all of a sudden, her and I both heard it. It went, we heard this big pop in my heart. I started crying, all of like a full release of everything that had been like this movie playing in my head. And I was seeing like in color, all of these things that had just really frustrated me from a little kid on. And then I had water coming out of everywhere. Like I was just a mess. And I didn't know what that was. So I went and searched, like, what is this? What is this hands-on healing? What is Reiki? What was that happened? Because when that popped in my heart, this white light kind of flooded this part of my body. I thought, this is intense. Like, what is this? Because I couldn't see, I couldn't do anything. And that's much like what happened to the people in the upper room. That's like what happened to Paul when he was walking to Damascus. So what was this, right? I didn't know enough to look at the Bible for that. I was looking to Reiki, like, well, what is this? Well, then I decided I'm going to get my Reiki Master Certificate. I'm going to become, a practitioner. So I started taking classes. And in my final class of my Reiki, my second degree course, and then I would have been able to practice after that. It wasn't my master's certificate yet, but in the second degree course, it was a final course, and I'm laying on a table. We had given, energy healing to everybody else, and I was the last one, and I was on the table, and there was 4 people around me, one at my feet, my head, and on either side. And they actually were touching my body. And all of a sudden, I thought I was going to, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, I felt like a rumbling in my lower gut. I'm like, oh my God, please do not let me pass gas right now. This would be so embarrassing. And that's not what happened. There was this big pop that happened. Again, it went, and they all heard it, and they're like, are you all right? And I couldn't even speak. This light flooded my entire body so boldly, so powerfully, that I could not see, I could not speak. I was just like, yeah, I couldn't do anything. So I tried to get up off the table when they finished, and I was shaking. I couldn't even get up off the table. And the teacher came over and she said, I've seen this before. Drink some water. You're going to be fine. Not explaining anything about this. So then I couldn't find anything related to hands-on healing or Reiki regarding this. Like, what was this? What happened to me? Because it changed my personality almost immediately. Like, a couple days later, I realized it had changed my personality. I know that I had released a lot. I felt a little bit lighter. But a couple days later, I'm witnessing my family arguing, and sisters are arguing back and forth. And normally I'd get involved, and I had no need. I had no want to engage with that. And I knew that was so different from anything that I had ever been before. And I knew that was a change in me, and that came from that experience. My eye color changed. Like, so many things, just instant instant change. And so, what was that? What happened? And so I started looking, and then it led me more to asking questions of the church. And of course, the people in the church couldn't answer me or didn't answer me. They did not relate it to the Bible. They just sort of placated over whatever I was asking, because it happened with Reiki. And they didn't see that Reiki is the same as hands-on healing. It's just called something different. And they call on a different entity, right? We call on God. They call whatever, the universe. And so I started asking some really tough questions. And then I started reading the Bible. And the more I read, the more I found. And the more I found, the more it made sense. And then fast forward, I received, I don't know if it happened before or after. I think it happened before, actually. So I went up to Vermont, and I went to go visit my daughter in Vermont. And I rented a hotel room. I was by myself, and I went to sleep one night, or I was on my way to sleep. You know how you kind of doze off and you go to sleep? Well, I'm almost asleep, and I have my hands like this. I remember laying on my side, and well, rewind. I had changed my eating. I was now eating vegan. I was fasting, very long fasts, water fasts, praying. I'm back in church. Was confirmed in the church, and because that wasn't done when I was a kid. And so then I was laying down, and I died in that hotel room. I died in a hotel room in Vermont. And now I came back, thank God. But yeah, I was by myself, and my spirit left my body. And I remember not wanting to look back at my body because I knew I would see myself laying there, and I didn't want to see myself laying there. And I went out. I remember knowing that I could pass through things, and I went through the wall of the hotel, was able to see my car and all the other cars in the parking lot, and I went out, and I just kept going, and then it became pitch black, complete blackness. There was nothing. There was no light. There was no one greeting me. There was nothing, and I got frustrated, and I was like, I don't want to be out here by myself. And boom, I was back. And I was back in that room, and I was back into my body. And my life has literally never been the same since. I have just been attacked left and right in so many different ways. But I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been an amazing ride, and it's available for everyone. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. But you have to want it. You have to believe. You have to seek God. You have to get into His Word. You have to, seek healing of your own self. Try fasting. Try, eating more vegetables than you do meat products, because what you put into your body affects how your body is in the world. It affects how it heals, and whether you're able to connect spiritually. So anyway, that's my brief story, 14-minute version.